Hello everybody, and welcome to episode 88 of Shelf Viewer. Today we'll be going over episode 3 of Daemons of the Shadow Realm. Now this episode predominantly focuses more on backstory stuff, but we start the episode off, we see as Yuru and crew, so Dera, Hana, and left and right, they end up pulling up to like a rest station. And we see as they're kind of discussing like modern things and all of that, and like they're introducing Yuru to modern food and stuff like that. And we see as Dara and Hana end up going into the actual rest station so they can eat, and they leave Yuru right and left at the car. But yeah, so they end up going in there, and they briefly discuss how they're going to work about concealing their presence in the world now that Yuru is with them. And they get to discuss, and they just have a little goofy scene and all that. We ultimately end up with them, seeing them agree to act as if they're married, to act then as Yuru is their child, and having Dara been an older man with a child, and him having remarried a younger woman in Hana. And she is freaking out about it. She's like, no, I'm going to marry Jason Statham. Which is just out of nowhere. But yeah, so we see that, and then ultimately end up getting a perspective of right, left, and Yuru. And we kind of see as they're just kind of briefly talking and all that. And we ultimately see and actually learn the actual names of each of them. So we learned that right is the male one. So I will be referring, when I say right now, I'm referring to the male one. And left is the female one. So these are obviously, as well known now, they're both Yuru's Daemons. And we see they get talking, and Yuru gets to asking about what all they've seen throughout the years. And they discuss how they have only seen stuff through their sedentary position at the front of Higayashi Village. And they try to discuss, and they mention how they heard about people talking when the twins were born and all that, and how they saw Yuru and his father go on multiple hunting trips early on in his life, and they never actually saw his sister until the night 10 years prior, when his father, mother, and sister had escaped Higayashi Village. Or Hagashi Village, yeah, Hagashi Village. But yeah, so this proves and actually corroborates the fact that the Asa, who is the older one, and not the little, like, blood demon thing, my Granny Yamaha, is actually Yuru's sister. I mean, we knew this because they were twins, and they had to be of the same age. But yeah, so we see, ultimately, as Hana and Dara end up coming back, and they try to discuss some other stuff. They discuss how they were, well, actually, I discussed the Kagamori first. I mentioned how the Kagamori clan was a group of individuals who actually lived in Higashi Village. However, they ultimately end up like schisming and separating from Higashi Village due to differences in viewpoints. And we also learned that there are other people who have previously lived in Higashi Village that no longer do, due to varying reasons. We learned that Hana and Tadera, so Dara's actual name is Tadera Ryu, and we actually learned this from him. We learned that their families also used to reside in Higashi Village. However, they left for an unspecified reason, and they have been passing down traditions from Higashi Village for years upon years. And this is one thing we learned that's been passed down in Tadera's family, is the ability to enter and exit Higashi Village. It requires a very specific method of going about it. But his family has passed it down for generation to generation. That's how he can actually enter. Hana cannot do this because she does not have the knowledge of the technique on how to do it. But yeah, I mean, it's not really a technique. It's just really like a path, very, very, very specific path. But yeah, and so they just kind of discussed this, just kind of generally, I guess, speaking on the complex of Higashi Village and all that. And we see as, we do briefly see as Aoi. I don't know who Aoi is yet, but we actually get a brief intermission scene of this character by the name of Aoi, who is being pursued by an individual who is presumably a stalker, but they're now attempting to become a murderer, because they pursue her all the way to this elevator, they try to stab her, but then suddenly a daemon spawns out of nowhere and consumes this person. And we see all this is happening as someone by the name of Jin is on the phone with Aoi, presumably, and he's like, yeah, I've got this figured out, you can go back to your workplace and all of that. And we learned that this Aoi was not actually Aoi. It was a daemon disguised as a human. And that's how it's kind of like an anglerfish in a way. It had like a little lure, and it lured the dude in and then consumed him. And then we see as a woman approaches, like a normal woman approaches the elevator after this has happened, and the dude was fully consumed, so there was no remnant of him left, but his knife was laid behind. And once the elevator door opened, the daemon rushed out of the door to end up meeting with its owner, who was Jin. And we see this, and she notices it, and he then notices that she notices it and kind of talks with her briefly. He doesn't actually end up killing her or anything. But yeah, so after this is kind of where we get like more of that background for Higashi Village and all that. And like I said, we learn how there are individuals that have left because of varying viewpoints, and that yes, you can leave Higashi Village, but it is really kept under wraps because they don't want the outside world discovering it and like interfering. And we actually get to learn of the prophecy which established who Asa and Yuru would be. We learned that a pair of twins, both male and female, would be born, and this would lead to mass conflict throughout Japan. And we learned that this prophecy had actually been fulfilled 400 years prior as well. So it's a cyclical prophecy, and it had led to conflict within Japan. However, the twins themselves had not led to the conflict, but the people who were wishing to use their powers conflicted over this. And we also learn of what Asa's ability is. Her ability is called Break. It is able to break and destroy any barrier at all. And then we learned that the complementary ability to this, like its opposite, is Seal. And this is presumably the ability that Yuru will have whenever he awakens it, because he mentions that he doesn't have any power, but then I believe it's Right ends up saying, well, you can gain this power. So now we presume that Yuru's ability will be Seal. And Seal is essentially just the antithesis to Break, because it can like defend and block anything. So they got into discussing briefly, and they mentioned like what would happen if Seal and Break came in contact, and they don't really know, and they don't know if anyone has ever possessed the ability or not. And Right and Left comment on how it hasn't even happened in 400 years, so it's either impossible or very rare. Yeah, so we see this, and we see is ultimately the group ends up going into town. They go to like I believe it was the Guntama Prefecture. They aren't in Tokyo apparently. But they go to this prefecture, and they're just kind of scouting around, looking about and everything. And we see as they're just kind of discussing about how the best place to hide a tree is in the woods, and how hiding Yuru among all these people is the best way to protect him from any possible outside forces that may mean him harm. And we kind of see as Left, Right, and Yuru briefly chatted up a little bit. We see that no one can actually see the Daemons, but there are specific like creatures. We see like a dog, and while they're still at the rest stop, a dog actually sees the Daemons, but the humans don't. So there are only select humans who can see Daemons, and they are very rare at that. Yeah, so they're just walking around talking, and ultimately Yuru ends up speaking with Right and Left about his goal. He ultimately knows that Dara and Hana are not completely on his side, because they took part in concealing the outside world from Higashi Village with Granny Yamaha and all that, and they had been in cahoots with Granny Yamaha. So he knows that he cannot fully trust them, but he also knows he can't fully trust Asa yet, because I mean she just appeared, and she might have ulterior motives as well, because she's with the Kagamori clan. So he gets talking with them, and he's like, this is what my goal is. I want to end up capturing or coming in contact with Asa, and then having her lead us to our parents, because he believes that they are still out there and still alive. But yeah, that was a great episode, honestly. It was not like much action happening, but it was still a great episode. It built a story, and I'm really ready to see where it goes. I'm like ready to learn more about Break and Seal, because I feel like those abilities can be like crazy powerful. But yeah, like I said, that's all there really was for it. And intro and outro this whole time, so we're not going to see like a different intro and outro every episode like we did with Chainsaw Man. But yeah, so I don't know why I said Chainsaw Man, but that's just an anime that has a different intro and outro every episode. So but yeah, that's all I really have to say about episode 3 of Daemons of the Shadow Realm. That's all I really have for episode 88 of Shelf Review. So thank you very much for watching.